Welcome to Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg. We're here to explore the imposter syndrome that haunts creatives, delving into how it affects their lives and work. Join us as we chat with authors and artists about creativity, self-doubt, featuring imposter characters in their stories, and the occasional imposter who pops up in their day-to-day lives.
Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Lori Brand to the show. Lori is a lifting enthusiast, group fitness instructor, yoga teacher, and software quality engineer. In past lives, she's been a gymnast, dancer, Playboy model, and bodybuilder. Her time in the Body Wars trenches led her to the realization that getting strong rather than shrinking is the way out. In an effort to spread the word, she's had articles published in Strong Fitness Magazine, T Nation, Inside Fitness Magazine, Defined Fitness Magazine, and more. Bodies to Die For is her first novel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, Lori, your novel is so good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, when we all connected about you coming on, I was so happy because I think Bodies to Die For first got on my radar from all of the wonderful bookstagrammers. People were, kind of progressively chatting about your book and reviewing. And then I started following you on Instagram. And I was just so inspired both by your book content, but also about, your kind of body image and fitness content, which I would love to get into more.
Sure.
But I guess first, I would love to, I think there's a lot of layers to what imposter syndrome could mean for you, kind of the physically, mentally, creatively. So where does imposter syndrome manifest in your life?
So I think very frequently, at least like in the fitness world, right? And you can see this in my main character, one of the two main characters, Gemma, in Bodies to Die For. But in the fitness world, if you are really in shape, people will think that you've got it all together and you've got it under control. And very frequently, I'm no longer into bodybuilding. I still lift weights all the time, but I would very frequently backstage see people right before a competition who are like in some of the best shape of their life, and they'll find flaws they'll be looking in the mirror and they'll be seeing flaws, and I think that's really pronounced, just never feeling, if you try to measure yourself against external standards, you're just never going to feel enough. So I would say there, especially. Yeah.
Well, one of the things, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was curious, does that sort of mentality, have you noticed that carry over from the bodybuilding world sort of into the writing world in any particular way?
So I think it would be different in writing, but that same, so Bodies to Die First, my debut, right? And so, it's so this is my second book I wrote. The first one I never got an agent for, never got it out there or anything. And so you're very kind of unsure. It's a new space, and you're hesitant. I maybe hate to use the word imposter here because I am new, right? And I don't know a lot, and I have to learn from some other people. But sometimes you just kind of wait for somebody to, like, out of the audience, like occasionally somebody will ask you something. They'll think that you have the answer. You know how publishing works, because I got a book published. And I really don't. I know a little tiny bit, and I still don't really know how publishing works at all, even though I've got a book out there. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I know how publishing works, and I've worked in it for 20 years.
Yeah.
It's a moving target. And I think it's just kind of like which aspect of it you're trying to figure out in the particular moment. But what strikes me is, I want to kind of hear your journey to getting published.
Yeah.
I love that you have a book that's unpublished. I think this is a dirty secret. That's not a dirty secret that so many writers have.
Yeah.
But the book that you have published reads to me like someone who's been writing for a long time. So were you kind of writing behind the scenes? Were you reading a lot?
I was reading. So I will say I was reading a ton, and that really saved me. So I didn't realize. So my first book, I just wrote, right? I just wrote a book. I at the time I wrote it. So I've really been reading a lot for golly, probably 15 years, maybe 20 years. I've been really reading a lot. And at some point, maybe like 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to write a book. And so I wrote a book, and I tried to get an agent. It didn't happen. And I set that aside because I got very busy with the rest of my life. At that point, I had gone back to school to get a master's in biomedical engineering and then a job. And so just my life got really busy. And so I set that aside. But the second book, the one that we're talking about now, so the first book I wrote because I really wanted to try to write a book. The second book I wrote because like I had something to say, man. I had something to say, and I was going to say it. I was going to say it no matter what. I was going to get it out there. And I think that really helped propel me forward, like in the face of all obstacles. I was just going to just push ahead. And if I ended up having to give it away for free on Amazon, man, that's what I was going to do because I had something to say, you know? And so I think that helped. Yeah.
I'd love to ask you a little more about that as well.
Yeah.
This book blew me away. There's so many sort of examples of really deft commentary on the way that, you know, our culture perceives and judges women, all of these layers that you hit. I'd love to just read. There's a small excerpt I just want to read that I think illustrates this beautifully.
Okay.
So it's from your character Gemma, from her POV.
Okay.
And she's just appeared on as a panelist on a talk show. And her sort of commentary is, she says, the other two panelists are self-made millionaires, but they're single and a little flabby. I lost a bunch of weight, look great, and married a hot guy. So I win. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And there's like so much in there. And I guess my question is, when you were going in, as you just mentioned, you obviously had a lot to say. Did you anticipate going in like all of the kind of layers and things that you were going to be able to kind of, you know?
I wanted to. When I wrote this book, it was originally called Body Wars. We sold it as Body Wars. And it's the underlying war on women's bodies, right? The wars that we wage on each other and the wars that we wage on ourselves. And I just really wanted to examine this body war from like all possible angles, you know, like the wars that women kind of wage on each other and the ones that ourselves, the way that society wages wars on us. I mean, just I wanted to explore all angles. And also to that point on that quote that you read, I wanted to show how it impacts all women, even women who are in really good shape, right? The way that society judges you, it impacts, you know, this diet culture impacts all of us, right? No matter what you look like, it does impact us. And I wanted to explore that. Yeah.
Well, it felt to me like inspired kept coming up. I know a lot of times people say like, oh, that was so inspired. But from the second, you know, obviously I had a sense of your background and your bio, but it really felt to me like there was like so much lived experience and like that observational kind of note taking that happens like with the writer's brain. Like you find yourself in a situation, I'm imagining, you know, maybe you were at like a bodybuilding competition and your writer brain was like, I need to be collecting all of this because the details are so incredible. And I guess before we talk too much specifically about the book, maybe you could give us the elevator pitch because it's such a delicious plot and then we can kind of unpack.
Okay, golly, I kind of forget what the elevator pitch is, but so maybe should I just read the back copy? Should I read just the back copy? Okay, so popular fitness influencer Gemma has transformed herself from a before into an after, complete with washboard abs, thriving business, and gorgeous husband. But social media can be deceiving. Offline, the cutthroat world of bikini bodybuilding just may eat her alive. That's if she's not first devoured by the secret nemesis that lurks beneath her polished surface waiting to destroy her. Software engineer Ashley is fat and frustrated with failed diets, with a world that wants her to shrink, with biased doctors, online trolls, and even her own mother, until Ashley falls in with a mysterious and radical sect of fat activists who are fighting back by any means necessary. She's never felt so alive, so full of purpose. She'll do whatever it takes to ride this high, destroy diet culture, and win the approval of her charismatic leader. Gemma and Ashley are on a collision course headed for the Olympia, the bodybuilding competition where futures are made and lost. But when Gemma's toughest rival turns up dead and more fitness girls fall like dominoes, it's beginning to look like the body image war has gone too far. So that's
amazing.
Kind of the back of it. Yeah.
Well, what is so incredible is that, I mean, the flap copy is amazing in how much it really encapsulates what the plot is, but you have taken a huge amount of like societal commentary and then wrapped it in a thriller.
Yeah.
And an intricate thriller with pacing and multiple characters and multiple POVs. So did you, when you set out to do this, it's very ambitious, almost like remaking your whole body composition. Did you approach it like you would maybe like a body makeover? Like, so here's each part I have to tackle.
Well, so originally, so I had been writing articles for fitness magazines for a while before that. And I was continually, when you're writing to fitness magazines, you're sort of preaching to the choir, right? The people picking up fitness magazines are people who value getting strong. And I had an article that I published. It was one of my favorite articles. I sold it to Strong Fitness Magazine. It was rebranded though, but the title was originally called "Why Be Small: A Manifesto," and it was all about like the importance of getting strong. But it was rebranded to like why your goals should include strength training or something like that. And I really missed that manifesto, and I really was looking for this manifesto. I wanted to be able to reach out to like not just the people reading fitness magazines. Like I kind of wanted a backdoor into like just the book's dedicated to all women everywhere. I wanted like this backdoor into like all women to like get this message through that, pursuing somebody else's idea of beauty it's ultimately unfulfilling, and that getting strong is the answer, and that we as women need to work together to lift each other up really. And, and value getting strong. So I wanted that backdoor. And so that's why I chose a thriller. But as far as figuring out how to do it, I just didn't know what I was doing in hindsight. So I wrote the book. I just wrote the book, right? And did the best I could. I thought I wrote a really good book. And then I started querying it. I managed to get an agent. But while we were at one of our first calls, he was saying, so in Act 2, blah, 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 blah. And I said, what do you mean Act 2? And he said, right. He goes, Act 2. I said, well, how many acts are there? And he said, well, there's 3, right? And so that was a shocker, that there was like an actual structure to the whole thing. So when I wrote it, I didn't know those major plot points. And so he helped me like reorganize the book a bit. I got really lucky that I got an agent out of that, but yeah. But like I said, I read a lot. I read a lot of thrillers. So I had that arc. I really did. I had that beginning, that middle, that end. I had the character arcs. I had, I had it going on, but like it maybe wasn't quite as laid out in quite as well as it could have been. He helped me tighten it up. Yeah.
Well, I think that's really typical. Sorry, Greg. That you're so close to the story, whether you know consciously or not that you're plotting it out or what act you're in or POV, you get all the story out, and then you need that objective voice to kind of be like, here's where you need to elevate this or take this out. So I think that's a really typical. What's amazing to me is that you just kind of like knew where you wanted to end up, and you got there. Did you have all of the character perspectives kind of mapped out in your mind? Did new characters emerge in the writing process?
So it's really interesting. Gemma was originally not. So there's 2 main points of view. Like there's other points of view, but Gemma and Ashley are the 2 main points of view. She was not originally a main point of view. She was a character that showed up around like chapter 5 or 6. And I thought that she was just so much more interesting. I kind of fought it for a few more chapters. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to rewrite it. And she's going to be the other main character. And then the person who was her makes a very small cameo much later. It's Kentucky Crystal. It's just this little girl who like pops up. She was originally the other main character, but she just wasn't as interesting. So I just went all the way back and but that's how it came about.
Maybe there's a book out there for Kentucky Crystal.
I don't know. I wasn't as interested. Once I ran with her, I just wasn't as interested, I liked the idea that, Gemma, so Gemma's like at the top of her game, right? She's like, everybody's going to look up to her and think she's got it together. but off camera, like she's like a mess. And I just thought that was so much more interesting, you know? Yeah.
You made a point a few minutes ago about the importance of women lifting each other up in the video community. And Crystal and also Bianca, I think, play those sort of, obviously this is a thriller, so there's going to be a lot of backstabbing and undercutting.
Yeah.
But I think for Crystal and Bianca to be there, you know, I think it is important to the story to have those, you know, there's smaller voices in there, but to have voices there that show that, you know, there is camaraderie and kind of team building along the way as well, though.
Yeah, I think so. And I will say that bodybuilders in general are some of the kindest and nicest people that you'll ever meet. I had to make some of them kind of catty, otherwise I just don't have a good book. You know, if everybody gets along, right, you just don't have a thriller. But there's some of the kindest people you'll ever meet.
Well, and I found that, I mean, I understand the need for like the heels and the foils characters, but I also was really struck by like the humanity of even, you know, some of the characters that might be considered antagonistic.
Yeah.
And I think you also have done this really clever thing where, you know, you have certain chapters opened with like the, you know, the carb count and the fat count.
Yeah.
Which is really brilliant, both because I think you're really telegraphing how vital that is to a person in that position, but then also there's an actual physiological like deprivation happening. So like these characters are not like working with 100% of their sanity. I was wondering, because you have such a kind of beautiful balance of the point of view of someone who is, you know, really fit. And by societal standards, you know, kind of the ideal. And then you have points of view of people who are not, you know, they have different varying degrees of body acceptance. Do you find that one character perspective was easier to write than others? And were you kind of bringing in things you've observed from being in that industry?
You know, I actually found almost all of them pretty easy to write. I really did. I don't know that one was easier to write than another. Because I think I have a fair amount of empathy for like what people are going through, and and some of the ones where like I wouldn't necessarily have lived it, like Andrew, who's that guy, that young guy. You know, I'm a mother of boys, first of all, but I also work with a lot of men because I'm an engineer as my day job, and I just have a lot of sympathy for men. You know, they're kind of fumbling their way forward, especially, you know, Andrew's like a young guy, he's like 20 years old, you know, and he's just sort of clueless. And he was a lot of fun to write. And, you know, and same with like, there's another man in it, like Rick, who's a coach, who's just like a complete, he's, you know, like a kind of like a roid head. I just want like those characters, even though I myself may not be like a great big male bodybuilder who's like on a lot of steroids. I just thought they were fun, you know, they were just fun to write. So I don't know. I guess I had fun with all of them. I really did, you know.
Yeah, that definitely comes across on the page. I actually was going to ask you about that, and you sort of answered the question I was going to ask you. But I'm always impressed when even, you know, veteran writers are able to write that narrative irony really well. Where somebody like an Andrew, who has, you know, objectively rather, pretty like, you know, I would say pretty objectively disdainful viewpoints. But you're able to as a writer from that point of view, and with him and with Rick, to like write it from a point of view where it's self-justified, and you make them almost sympathetic in these really kind of detestable guys. You know what I mean? It's kind of a magic trick to pull that off well. Was that something? Did you feel just confident about that? You felt like the empathy that you talk about just guided you through?
You know, because, you know, I never really like it in a story when like the bad person's all bad, right? Because very few bad people are all bad, and so I kind of wanted the reader to get an idea of like why they were like they were, where they were coming from, and how they could even think these things, you know. And so I kind of wanted to put the reader in their mind a little bit to just give them I guess a little empathy, and just to help understand where they were coming from. Plus it's so funny, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things, Laura, I was curious about was your main character, Gemma, I think has a really compelling kind of transformation story.
Yeah.
And knowing that you were also and still lift and more competed.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable sharing kind of like what your transformation story and how you got into weightlifting?
Sure. So I've actually been pretty lucky. Like through my whole life, I've been relatively fit, but I will go all the way back to when when diet culture first popped on my radar. Right, I was 10 years old, and my mom was driving me to my dance lessons, and I've been in dance lessons like since I can't even remember when, probably since I was 3. I don't remember my first dance lesson, and she was driving me to dance, and she said, Barb's not going to be teaching for a few months. Just, Jill, who's her assistant, she'll be teaching. Barb's going to be off on the side with a notebook taking notes, but you won't be able to talk to her. And I said, why not? And my mom said, because she had her jaw wires shut. And I said, well, why'd she have her jaw wires shut? And my mom said, well, because she wanted to lose some weight. And I was just like, whoa, what? And I was asking all these questions, and my mom, she had to drop me off then, and she's like, don't go in there asking all these questions, right? Because you're going to make her uncomfortable. And I got dropped off, and other girls got dropped off too. But what was so startling about me was that like nobody was freaking out, right? No one's freaking out. The other parents aren't freaking out. It's just like another day. And, then over the next, couple months, Barb starts to shrink and she gets smaller and smaller. And so I got to sort of see that happen. And at one point she had pointed at me and she motioned her finger. So I went over to see what I had done. And, and she was talking to me like this because her jaw's wired shut. And I asked her if you could see the wires, and she nodded that you could. And I asked her if she could show them to me, and she hooked her finger in the side of her mouth and she pulled it back, and you could see these metal wires zigzagging up and down between her upper and lower teeth. Wow. And they looked like sharp, pointy teeth. It freaked me out. But it left such an impression on me, so that diet culture, like how important was it to be slim? Like it was that important. So that's been on my radar since I was like 10. And so it's just been there and been there and been there. And so it's one of the reasons why I've probably noticed all these things throughout my life. But so I was always just very concerned about never getting too big, right? It just really governed me. And that stayed with me until I was probably about 40. Like through I was in college, I worked as a stripper. So like that's just going to make it worse. And then even like when I got pregnant with my husband, like I right away, I bounced back, I got right back on it. And for so long, it was always like just trying to hit this external look, right? Like this exterior thing of what was like a societal standard. And, as long as you're trying to hit somebody else's ideal, and you'll never make everybody happy, you'll just never make everybody happy. Different people have different ideals. You're always just going to kind of feel like you're never completely like satisfied. And it was when I was about 40, I sort of had like almost like a midlife crisis of sorts. And I had looked at myself in the mirror, and I was still the same size, but I had quit lifting weights for about 6 or 7 years because I was so busy with my kids. And I remember that when I had stopped lifting weights, even though I didn't gain any weight, I got like mentally weaker. I just found I got mentally weaker. And I remember I was looking at myself in the mirror and thinking that I missed my arms. That was my first thought. I thought, I missed my arms. Like I wanted to look like if I wanted to punch somebody, I could hurt them. And so I started lifting weights again because I honestly wanted to look vaguely threatening. Like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to like mess somebody up if I felt like it. Yeah. And doing that, I started to all of a sudden start to feel more confident. I started to feel better. And it was lifting weights with this wanting to get strong. I wanted to get really strong. I wanted to get like scary strong. And as I did that, I was no longer so angry, and I got in a pretty good mood. I got pretty confident. And all of a sudden, instead of like looking at like what I couldn't eat, so I got small, I was like looking at like what I needed to eat to like grow my muscles. Like I got to get like this much protein. I got to get this much rest. I got to do all this and that so that I can, lift, so I can lift better tomorrow. And it was that growth mentality. And all of a sudden one day I just realized, like, my God, it's like a cage door opened. Like I've been doing this wrong, like for decades, man. I've been doing this wrong. And that's when I started writing for all these fitness magazines. And I mean, if you're like listening right now, if you like see me on the street and you just want to like talk about lifting splits, like I will talk your ear off. Like I will just, I mean, like I'm like a Jehovah Witness. I will just like preach strength training to like, you wouldn't believe it, And it was that really, it was that. So it's like my own transformation, even though I probably don't look all that much different, it was an internal transformation.
Yeah. Well, with the amount of stuff that, I mean, and this book elucidates this really beautifully, with all of the kind of things that you're going against, especially as a woman in society, all of those things that you're pushing back against. I mean, it sounds like you were able to find a way to sort of address your own body where it was empowering as opposed to being like, all this thing that what else do I have to be doing and what else do I have to be stripping away?
It happened completely by accident. I wasn't even looking for that. It's like I fell into it backwards and I couldn't even believe it.
Kind of like writing books, it sounds like. And what I keep hearing is like you have this like intuitive side of yourself that just puts you into a forward trajectory, and it's growth. And I love that you said that, the growth mentality, whether it's transforming your body to add strength instead of get smaller, to write an entire book without overthinking it. It's just kind of like, it seems to me that if you can do that in more areas of your life, the kind of royal you, people listening, myself, and you don't second guess yourself as much. There's not as much room for self-doubt, which I love. And
also as a debut author, like you just have to, people are like listening to this who have never had their book published yet. You just have to like push through the self-doubt, right? Like, 'cause there's going to be so much, right? There's going to be like, it's very unlikely, not to be a downer, but that your first query is going to get an agent. There's going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be a lot of no responses. Even if you get an agent, your agent will submit your book and there's going to be no's. And then even if you get lucky enough and somebody buys your book and you publish it, you're going to get reviews on Goodreads. People are like, nope, not for me. You just have to push. You just have to push through it, I guess, Yeah.
Well, that kind of segues into another question. I know I'm jumping around here, but it doesn't sound like you kind of were orienting yourself as a writer until in like the last decade.
Probably. Yeah.
So you write your first book and it doesn't end up getting an agent, which is a really common story. And then for a lot of people, it's just stop. I have other things going on in my life. You certainly had other interests. What got you over the potential hump of like, this isn't working, I'm going to just go back to my original plan or make a new plan? How did you decide, I'm going to write this next book? I mean, I know you said you had something to say.
Well, so it's interesting. I was actually writing a different book when I wrote this one. I started again writing a book, and I was about 20,000, maybe 30,000, maybe 28,000 words in. I was like significantly in, right? And this other book. And then something happened in the news, right? And it just captured my mind. It captured my imagination. And I wanted to write about that. And then I kind of pushed it aside because I was like, no. I'm like 30 grand into this. Like, I'm going to keep going. But I kept going. I kept thinking about the other book, thinking about the other idea. I thought, well, maybe I'll just finish this one, and then I'll write the other one. Right. But I kept going back. And so one day I just said, well, you know what? I'm just going to try. I'm just going to like, why don't I just, for right now, I'll just write a little bit. I'll see what happens. And I wrote like 5,000 words. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going this way. And that was, and it was that spark for this book right now that like, I had to, I can't even explain it. Like I like just had to say it, and so I'll just tell you what it was. Right. So So in January of 2020, Jillian Michaels was interviewed on BuzzFeed News, and she was asked what she thought of as Lizzo's a body acceptance role model. And she said, why are we celebrating her body? Why aren't we celebrating her music? Because it's not going to be awesome if she gets diabetes. And social media just blew up. Okay. And this is it back when, you know, and I, at this point, I have a lot, I'm a bodybuilder at this point, right? I've got a lot of friends who I know on Instagram who are in bodybuilding. I got a lot of fitness pros who are, and so I've got my friends there, but I also followed some body positive people too. And so I'm watching this thing just blow up on social media. People are like calling for Jillian's head, right? And there's, the fitness people are saying, no, she's right. It's not going to be great if we got to quit glorifying obesity or normalizing obesity. And then other people are saying Jillian's fat shaming. And I started thinking, like, what if like this online war clash moved offline? Like, what might happen? And then so that's what it's got me thinking. And then a few months later, Adele posted a birthday picture of herself to Instagram where it was clear that she had lost a bunch of weight. And right away, the comments just went nuts. And people were saying that they were disappointed in Adele because they looked up to her, right? And they felt that she had let them down. And other people were saying, no, it's great that she's getting healthy. But like, a woman ought to be able to post a picture of herself to Instagram, just a birthday picture, without the entire world judging her. And that was when I said, you know what, screw it. I'm setting everything aside. I'm writing this book. Because I kept thinking, like, is nobody who is sane going to speak, right? I mean, you know, and people were writing articles and things. But I thought, well, what if I could like get in people's minds like a different way? And that's why I wrote this book. It was just I felt the need to say something like big time, and so I just wrote the book. You know, yeah.
Well, the social media thing, I love the way you treat it in the book as well, because you sort of are showing in a really savvy way of how social media is not only a platform to fan the flames of these arguments, but then also they're able to kind of like capitalize off of it in terms of like product marketing, advertising for the very things that are like, again, stoking these kind of internal debates.
Yeah, I just wanted to explore it. There was so much to explore.
You really got in there. I mean, you really got in there.
You hit so many notes. That's why I was like, you know, another chapter would pass, and I'm like, how is she going to put in yet another thread? And you tie it up all really well. And I think part of what you do so effectively is you're tackling these kind of big issues through the perspectives of the characters. So at no point does it feel, you know, preachy. Or...
I didn't want it to feel preachy at all. And like during one of the editing things, there was actually part of, at one point it was suggested, there were a few notes that were suggested that I didn't take because I thought they came across as preachy. I thought that the reader could get there on their, I didn't want to give an opinion, right? I just wanted the reader to have to like explore it, right? Like, what do they think of it, right? You know, because some of these things aren't clear, right? You know, I mean, there's a lot of ambiguity in some of this stuff, you know. So I just left it there. Yeah.
Well, you've mentioned Goodreads, and you know, obviously, there's a lot of kind of like hot button topics that you've bitten off here. Have you gotten comments that are one way or the other unexpected?
Well, it was. I will say it was expected. Like my book. Before we, like maybe 2 months or so, or 3 months, kind of like late in the game, all of a sudden my publisher thought we should probably add a trigger warning because they were a little bit afraid that like some people might not like it. But I was kind of anticipating that I might get some pushback. I've gotten a lot of really. Nobody has direct messaged me mean stuff. The stuff that people have direct messaged me has been really positive. And what I've been really surprised by, I guess. So when I wrote this book, I thought, you know, because I had something to say, I thought that my background gave me a really unique perspective to write this. Okay, I've now realized that like everybody's encountered. Yeah. I've had so many people tell me their own diet culture horror stories. Like, I mean, just, I've had so many people tell me like things that have happened to them that like, like boyfriends taking plates of food away while they're eating, or like their mothers sending them off to fat camp and like when they're like 12 and like all sorts of stuff. So that was, I guess, the most surprising thing. But nobody's been I mean, I've had some, not great reviews on Goodreads, but that happens, I mean, everybody's going to have those. So I just, you can't write a book to please everybody or you'll please nobody. So,
right.
Yeah.
Very wise advice.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, one of the things that I was taken aback by, probably just because as a man, I don't have these kinds of experiences with the medical profession. But one of the things you touch upon in this is the fat shaming that actually goes through during doctor visits. And it's like, I mean, you think about that just, objectively, like the medical community that is there to try and promote good health is, undermining women psychologically, emotionally, physically with this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so in my book, there's a particularly glaring example, right? Like where she a car almost runs her over. She's got to jump out of the way and she falls as a result. And when she's at the urgent care, the doctor says, well, have you considered losing weight? You might not have tripped if you, if you were more agile, which is, I thought, pretty glaring. But I will say but I do feel for it's a tough call on doctors, because sometimes certain health concerns might be related to weight. So it puts people it puts doctors in a difficult position. But there are so many cases of women who go to the doctor for things that are completely unrelated to their weight. And I mean, we're all aware of what size we are. Like, we don't need somebody to bring it up, right? And, if you go there because you've, sprained your ankle or cut your knee or whatever, like, you don't need to have like a talk about like your weight. Like, you just want your ankle fixed. You know what I mean? There was a thought that some people have floated that perhaps one of the reasons, that overweight people tend to have worse health outcomes is because perhaps they avoid going to the doctor, because they know they're going to get that talk and they don't want to go. They don't want to get that talk. And so they maybe avoid going to the doctor. And so I just kind of wanted to explore, like that kind of thing. Like how frustrating must that be to, to go, you just want your ankle fixed. You just got, I keep using the word ankle, but it's right. She hurt her knee. So that was based off of, I had read I lifted that right out of somebody else's personal story who had said, but hers was different. This is like a legit story. This woman had to take out the garbage at her work, and she worked at like a restaurant or a bar or something. She had to take it out the back door, and she was carrying it. It was really big. And while she was walking, she stepped on a rock because she couldn't see where she was going. She stepped on a rock. She ended up tripping and she sprained her ankle. And so she went to the doctor, and the doctor kept trying to talk to her about about losing weight, because she had to get her like ankle fixed. Mm-hmm. And he was saying, well, if you would have been more agile, this might not have happened. And I thought it was such an obnoxious example that I made it the knee, and I made it, a Cadillac Escalade that almost ran her over, and I put it in my book. But yeah.
I love it. I love how inspired by real stories and real happenings that I have that experience too. If I just sit down and read the paper, I'm like, there's a couple book ideas, gotta file those.
Right?
Are you currently working on something now? What's your kind of vision?
I am. My agent and I have gone back and forth on it a few times, several times. And I'm making what I'm hoping is going to be maybe, I know it's not the last round of edits, but I'm hoping this is the last round of bigger edits, maybe. So we got it to a place that we felt like it was okay, and then we decided to give it to a few beta readers and get some feedback. Okay. And so the beta readers gave us some feedback, and I'm trying to implement some of that, and then I will send it to him. I'm hoping by the end of this weekend, but I don't know, maybe at the end of next weekend, and get his thoughts on it. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious about, that's a nice glimpse into your process, and beta readers is actually something I don't think we've talked about that much on the show.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of walk us through like what your writing day looks like?
Okay. So my writing day, so I work during the day. I've got a 9-to-5 type of job, right? So I work as an engineer, and then I write in the evenings. And then on Sunday, I tend to have like a long day. Like I will write longer. And then, It's like right now I'm not, so if I'm writing a first draft, I'll try to write, like 700, 800, 1,000 words a day, in a first draft, just to keep it, to keep it moving. But right now I'm not doing a first draft. So I'm, going back and I'm just fixing things, but I'll try to work for like 2 hours a day on that, and longer on the weekends. But like last night I went to, oh golly, I forget her name. I don't have the book right here. I went to a book launch last night, of a Chicagoland author. The woman who, her first name is Renee, and she wrote Let's Call Her Barbie. So she had a book launch at the Winnetka book stall, which is close to my house. So I thought, well, I'm going to go support this local author. So I went to her book launch. And so I only probably worked on my book for like 45 minutes last night, because I would count going to a book launch as like a bookish type of event. So, that's how I usually try to do it. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. And you're supporting a local author, and
I think it's really good. It's so fun to be able to go to a book launch as like the person who it's not for, because it's a relaxing, fun event, it's like your own, you're like freaked out, so it's really fun now for me to go to these. But yeah.
As well, by the time this airs, we will have already done it, but we have a book launching next week.
Trust issues, right?
All I want to do is go to other people's book launches.
Okay.
Exactly. Lori, you're now working on, you mentioned obviously Bodies to Die For. You mentioned the other book that you had been writing, and now the new one. So I think so much of writing, the process for us as authors is that kind of self-discovery aspect.
Yes.
At this point, having these sort of three projects, have you found certain kind of patterns, either in the way you address themes, the way you work, certain things like that? Are there things that you're able to kind of iterate?
Yeah, I have to. So I got this advice at some point along the way, and I think it's great advice. To just write a crappy first draft, to just get it done. Just keep pushing ahead. Just get it done. Don't dwell on it, because there's going to be parts that you're going to cut out, parts you're going to amplify, or whatever. For me, it's very much held true. Like I don't really know what the book is about until like I'm like almost done with it. So this book that I have right now, like I had like these big points. Like I knew like I wanted to hit this and hit this and hit this, because now I understand like story structure, right? So I had that, but as far as like the bigger themes on what the book is about, or like these like the underlying like kind of like rumbling themes, I didn't really know that until I was pretty deep into the book. But yeah, I think for me, I think I just have to like push ahead and just keep moving forward. And because the one that's out there now, the Bodies to Die For, like there were like some beautiful scenes and chapters that ultimately didn't support the story that I had to cut. And it killed me, right? Because I worked on them really hard, and I thought they were just beautiful, but they ultimately didn't serve the story. So we cut them. So this time I'm getting the story down, and then I'm gonna that now I'm building the different parts up and things. Yeah.
When I think about the hard drives across the world with the deleted scenes and chapters.
Oh, I know. And I keep them. I've got I'll probably not even use them, but I keep them. Like I can go back and I can lift a whole chunk out if I want, Yeah.
Right. Just a giant Franken book one day.
Yeah.
Are you, Lori, do you enjoy the kind of conceiving the idea, the sitting down to write, the promoting the book?
I'm not a big fan of the promoting. I like to talk to people, right? I like to talk to people who read the book. I love to talk to people who wrote the book, but I'm not really good about I don't really like to just blast constantly on social media, read my book, right? I don't like to if I, for instance, when I was at that book launch last night, I was talking to people. I wasn't saying I wrote a book, even though I could see it. It was right there at the bookstore. But I just, I was there to support Renee's book. Right. And I'm just not, I don't know. So that's probably not my favorite. What I kind of like is watching the story evolve. As you're writing the story, like different things come to you, like as you're writing it, like you're like, oh, well, what if this happened? And then what if that happened? Well, then this could happen. And then, oh my gosh, I could go all the way back in here and I could pop this back in here so it could foreshadow this. And I kind of like, I like that. I like the layers or this, to be surprised by the story, to be surprised by where it's taking me, you know?
I'm with you. I love that part of it.
Yeah.
You mentioned, in the book, how you explore the importance of community. And we're talking a little bit now about sort of the author and writing community as well. You mentioned you're in the Chicagoland area. Do you have either like a writer's group or just sort of like a loose collective of other authors in the area that you feel,
so I don't have a writer's group. I never had a writing group. And when I wrote The Bodies to Die For, like I didn't know any other authors in the area. Like I didn't even have at the time, I didn't even really have an author to reach out to do like a co-talk with me at my book launch. The author that I got came through my publicist who knew, I'll just say, I'm going to actually hold up his book because he's the nicest guy ever. David Ellis, God bless his heart. The Best Lies. He also wrote Look Closer. He's a Chicagoland author.
Okay.
My publicist introduced me to him, and God bless him. He read my book and he came and did like my book launch with me. So I had a author to talk to, and he made me look really good. He's a great guy. Like he was able to, I don't know what he did, but he's really good at asking questions, and he just made the whole thing go really smoothly because he's a pro. But so since my book has launched, I've been more interested in like I didn't think of until my book sold, I didn't think of myself as a writer, I just didn't. And now I've been trying to be more cognizant about meeting other writers in the area, like going to like their book launches and supporting writers and things. So yeah, not a writing group, but I'm trying to meet more authors in the area, and it's been great. Yeah.
There's that kind of similarity again, that you have a published book, we've both read it and loved it, and that feeling of like, am I a writer? And I know before you were published, it's even harder. And I'm just wondering, like the parallels of, when you're a bodybuilder, you have the muscles, you're undeniably a bodybuilder. Did you ever at any point feel in that space like I'm not?
Yeah, very much so, because I competed at the local level, the NPC level. Although I did go to different national shows, like I went to one in Pittsburgh, but I was never. So there's a couple different levels, like in my book, like Gemma is an IFBB bikini pro, like she's a professional bodybuilder. So I was not of a professional bodybuilder level. I was like down a level for it, even though I know people who are professional bodybuilders, but yeah, I mean, like there are just people who are just they just have so much more muscle than like I could lift for the rest of my life and I would never have this much muscle, and I maybe don't have the genetics to look like that. So it's, you just have to, I mean, unless you are legit the person who's going to win the Olympia, there's always going to be somebody with a better body that you have, and you just have to, which is one of the reasons why I don't really compete in bodybuilding anymore. Like, in bodybuilding, like you're chasing a look, right? You're chasing a look. Like when you talk to your coach, you'll talk about the package that you're going to bring to stage. Like what kind of a package are you going to bring? Because it's a package. It's a look. Whereas, lifting just for the sake of getting strong, as a bodybuilder, nobody's interested in how much you can squat. They're interested in what you look like. And so that's, I think, why I sort of abandoned that after a while. It was very fun. I have no regrets on doing it. I did look briefly into, I got into for a while into Olympic lifting, which was very fun. That's like how much you can snatch, how much you can clean and jerk. I can't do very much, but that was very fun. I got into that, and then now my shoulder's a little bit messed up. And I briefly looked into powerlifting, which is the squat, the deadlift, and the bench press. I just don't have the build to ever really be like legitimately successful in that. I just don't, right? So I probably won't ever compete in that, but it's just fun. Like lifting weights in general is fun. It's fun to see. It's fun to add 5 pounds every now and then. It's fun to rise up with a lot of weight on your back. It really is. It's incredibly empowering, and so that's I'm mostly like just like embracing like the endorphins of the whole thing, you know.
Well, and not to mention the fact that, you know, at least I'm 46, and I was always kind of under the false impression, I think, for a long time that like women don't lift weights because it makes you bulky.
Yeah.
And now I'm at the age I am, and I'm being told like you need to be lifting weights because of bone density and all of these other reasons.
Your muscles were going to start to waste away, right?
Right. Yeah, and you know, not only for health and mental, you know, I love that you have created a really awesome page turning story, but then there's this deeper message, like getting strong is where it's at for women.
It really
and we need to be getting strong and not trying to become smaller and not shrink ourselves. And it's good for us, you know, like depriving yourself of calories and getting skinny and smaller is not good for us in every possible way. So, and I just haven't heard a lot of mainstream, certainly not authors, talking about how good this is. So thank you for that. I felt totally inspired after reading your book.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, okay. I need to lift heavy things.
It's really fun. It really is. Like if you stick with it for a while, I think about 4 months or so. If you stick with it for 4 months, I think you'll see like a really big change in like just your whole perspective. I really do. Like I'm at the point now where like if I don't because I do it every morning when I wake up, right? It's like the first thing I do. It sets the tone for the day. You know, it's okay to take like a day off here or there, but like if I go like a few days, I start to like not feel quite so like happy and powerful and like confident and you know, and like I said, like when my kids were little, I didn't live for like 6 years or so. I was like not the same person, you know, like I was just I was just getting like really kind of pushed around, you know, by like, you know, by like the school, the other mothers, you know, my own kids, my husband, everybody was just kind of like, I was just doing everything for everybody. And I was just making my needs smaller and smaller and smaller. And then I started lifting weights and I was like, no, that's not going to happen. Okay. You go pick that up and you put that back, you know? It just changed, how I like viewed the world, you know? Yeah.
I'll as a testament to what you just said, my aunt Eva actually has been lifting for a while now, and it's the same thing.
Yeah,
it's like she said, she talks about the level of confidence and the level of being, you know, that kind of surety in herself.
Yeah,
it's beautiful to see.
Yeah.
Lori, would you say that there's any kind of parallel in terms of like writing? Like does being able to, you know, write a story like that have that sort of self-empowering quality as well?
I think so. I will also say that lifting and exercise really supports creative things. Like when I'm a lot of times in the morning when I'm lifting, like other ideas will come to me. It happens all the time, where like these ideas come to me. But so much of life is like training, right? So like when you like with like writing a story, like you think, like some people think like I can't write a book or I can't do this and that. But like if you start to, like, you know, I've set a thing for myself where I do 2 hours a night, right? And like if you just start to write something, you know, every night or every day or whenever that is for you, you start to build up that muscle, right? That creative muscle of being able to just sit down and do it, right? And then it becomes a habit, and you'll write through some days where it doesn't feel so great, but you stick with it, and you're able then to look back, right? And now all of a sudden you've got 20,000 words. Now all of a sudden you've got 30,000 words. And some of the days where maybe the writing isn't so great, as long as you get it done, you can go back and you can fix it, right? Or if it's really not a good day for writing, you can go back and maybe there are like different, like I put like 2 X's where I've got to like look stuff up or whatever. Like if I'm really not feeling inspired, I'll go back to my double X's and I'll like find the stuff where I didn't know what to, you know, like I had to look something up, I had to figure something out or whatever. but you'll start to see that you can do it, right? In 80,000, what they say, like how to eat a gorilla one bite at a time. You'll start to see that like 80,000 words doesn't just happen, right? It's 300 words, 500 words, 700 words, whatever it is, it's something, and it adds up, and you develop that belief in yourself,
And do you, when you're approaching it now that you are, a couple books in and you have your framework, somewhat in place, do you have certain ways that you try to build like individual parts of your skill set, like maybe character development or dialogue? Is that, from reading, or are those like particular things you look into for those?
So I know some people will like do a pass of their manuscript where they look at like character arc or pass of the, I don't actually do that. But I guess what it's more like how I feel like I've gotten better is, well, just by writing, but also I'm almost always reading, right? I'm almost always at night before I go to bed, I read. And now that I've been writing, I will either, when I'm reading, I'll either like be like, wow, like this is really wonderful. And I'll stop for a minute. I'll say like, what's so wonderful about that? Or why is this pulling me along? Or sometimes I'll see things and I'll be like, this is really boring, or this doesn't do it for me. And I'll stop and I'll think to myself, well, why is that? And so like that's simply reading other people's work, I think is helping me get better. Right. I think.
So, kind of reading with that analytical eye.
Yeah, I can't even turn it off now. Now I just do it, right? Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe how fast this hour went. I want to keep talking, but also just leave off the listeners. You've just had so much. You've dropped so much wisdom. That's really beautiful. But I just wanted to go back to, for anyone who's listening, is there anything you would say to someone who either wants to start a novel or start a body transformation? What do you think, is kind of the first step in getting in the mindset of growth?
So for body, I'll do both, right? So if I just when you start a novel, I would say, first of all, read widely, right? Read, or especially the genre that you think you're going to write in. You should be reading. You should be, because then you'll understand like what good writing looks like, or you'll start to understand. And then you should write some every day. And it doesn't have to be great, right? It just start to write, and you might scrap it all, right? But you'll start to, if you set aside a certain amount of time every day, you'll start to see yourself as a writer. It might take a while, but you'll start to see it. You start to think of yourself as a writer, and start to just see yourself as a writer. Because that's how we get stronger, right? And then as far as anybody looking for a body transformation, again, it's almost the same thing as like you have to start. I would suggest finding a type of exercise that appeals to you. Like in my book, Ashley takes up boxing, right? She wanted to punch something, so she took up boxing. That appealed to her, and it made her feel like she was getting strong. For some people, that might be tennis. For somebody, it might just be walking, right? Maybe you're maybe for you, if you could start walking every night after dinner, like maybe the first time it's around the block, but maybe then after a few weeks, it's like a half a mile. Whatever that is, I'd like to see you add in some weights, right? Some weight training, because I think that's where the biggest transformation is. But that might not be what strong is for you. So I don't want to if strong is not weight training for you, maybe not. But I would just start doing it. You just have to start, and then also, you also have to not look at your body not as something to hate, but like as something to nourish. And so you should be thinking about like, how do I nourish my body, right? I'm going to be training my body, whether it's through swimming or tennis or whatever that is. So you're taxing your body, you're putting it through these motions. So you have to give it some nutrients to support it. And so if you start to think about how you nourish your body instead of what you can't have, it's not a restriction, but I'm going to nourish my body. It needs some protein. I probably need some micronutrients, like some minerals and vitamins, like some vegetables and things. If you start to think about it like that, it's that growth mentality. And I really think that's where like the answer is. Yeah.
Thank you so much for both of those. I'm going to leave this call and then go lift 2 big piles of books.
Okay. Those are fun things to lift. Okay.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
and
this has been amazing.
Something good to be done with our ever-growing TBR piles as well.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Well, Lori, thank you for the wonderful advice. It's been inspiring to talk to you. It's been a blast. Before we do sign off, can you tell our listeners where to find you on social media, out in the world, anywhere?
Yeah. So on social media, I'm at Lori Brand Writes and Lifts, and on my website is Lori Brand Writes. So yeah.
Thank you again, Lori.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg is created and hosted by us, Elizabeth Keenan and Greg Wands. The show is produced and edited by Bookwild Collective founder Kate Harrogate, and Scott Leeds composed our original theme music, and Steve Loma designed our logo.
And you can find us on IG at Imposter Hour Podcast and online at imposterhour.com. Thanks for listening.